Hi, welcome back to the Wisdom of Your Soul. I'm Janice Mary, your host, and I'm so glad that you're back. I have so much to talk about. I was off last week, so I'm so happy to be back to continue doing our exercises with the magic and also talking about a lot of different things today. So today what I wanted to talk about, a good friend of mine asked me, how can she cope better with not worrying about her children. And it's really hard to not always be consumed in our thoughts about our kids and how they're doing and not basically worrying about them. But it was even a little bit more specific. She was asking about how can she not worry about her adult children, which I think is such a great topic and is really, really hard to do. When our kids are younger, we feel like we have some control over their lives or, taking care of them and feeding them. And even though I think that sense of control when they're younger is probably false, I don't think we have as much control as we think. When our children get older, it gets more difficult. So it's really hard to kind of just let your children do what they need to do in their lives, without us being very tied to them. And, so that was her question. So when I sat in my soul energy and asked about that, as I often do, because I do have adult children, so I practice this very often. The thing that I always hear is that this is their life now, and there isn't anything that you can do to control your adult children's lives, and nor should you. This is their journey, and you can look back at your own journey and how your parents helped you. And you can look back and say, okay, well, how did my parents help me as I was a young adult? And what helped and what felt disrespectful? What didn't I like? Bring yourself back to that time can be really helpful, which I thought, is really good practice. I know my parents did certain things that I liked and certain things that I didn't like. But then when I look back at the things they didn't like, I could see how much those things did benefit me. So it's not an easy thing to detach from. It's really, really hard to let go of your adult children. But we really we really don't have a say in their lives anymore. I think it's much easier to detach from them when they're doing well, when their lives are going well and they're happy, then we feel good, but when they start to struggle, or if they have, God forbid, an addiction, or if they have something really serious going on, it can be consuming. And I do have a lot of clients that have those issues where their kids, are not doing well. And I'll tell you, they feel like a failure. They feel like they've done something wrong to create this. And, when I ask the soul about that, I always hear no, because think back to your own childhood. Think back to the things that you learned from your parents, and the things that were important to you, came from you, came from within you. It didn't really come from your parents. There are things that you take on from your parents because it's like you, and there are things that you don't take on. And so when we really go back and remember, oh, I was making that decision. My parents were telling me, don't do that, and I did it anyway. That gives us a little bit of an indication of how much people are self-directed and how their journey really needs to be respected. I mean, when I was a young adult, I wanted to do it my own way, my own time, and I didn't want to hear anything from anybody. If anybody tried to give me advice, I think I got very insulted. So I didn't like it one bit. So I know for my adult children, I know that they're not going to really want to hear advice at this point in their life. They're old enough to make their own decisions. But what the soul energy will kind of bring to us is to say that we can be, their best cheerleader, their best supporter, and we can offer help. We can offer help every chance we get. So it would be more like, how can I help you? Is there anything that I can do to help you? And then there's that balance. You have to weigh out how you're helping your adult children. You don't want to enable them. You have to go within and say, okay, is the way that I'm helping them too much, or is it too little? So the best thing to offer your children is just your presence, your support, your time, and to stay away from the things that might, interfere a little bit, But again, it's very, very individual. So I wouldn't say there's a general rule of thumb. I think that you have to really go within, and there are times when, yes, your adult children may need some money and you give them money, and then there are times that maybe you don't, and you have to kind of weigh that out for yourself. But the biggest thing is that when they're struggling, it's not your fault. It's not your fault, and that's really hard for most parents to believe that it's not their fault, but it isn't. When you think back at your own mistakes, was that your parents' fault? I feel, I feel a very strong no to that. But I know when I've talked to my friends about that, they'll say, yeah, I do blame my parents. If they did this or this, then I wouldn't be doing that. And, but I don't know. I don't blame my parents for the choices that I've made. I feel like, my childhood was a short portion of my life. And from adulthood on, then that was on me. Because I know I have seen many, many of my clients that came from really, really dysfunctional and very abusive childhoods do so well. So it kind of proves that wrong. And then when I kind of check in with my soul energy and that really unconditional energy, what the soul will just say is, well, no one's doing anything wrong. There is no right or wrong. The journey, whether it looks good from the outside or not, is that person's journey. And the more we can adopt that belief, I think the easier it is to let our children fly. That if they're doing well, that's great, and we can feel good about that. And when they're not doing well, to know that they're receiving some gifts, that they're growing and they're going to figure it out and they're going to be fine. But even though it's a rocky road, it doesn't mean that you have failed or that you need to step into too much. You do it where you feel it's appropriate. So when your adult children are having a really hard time, that's the time you can work on yourself. That's the time you can go within and ask for help from your soul energy to get that unconditional love, and also to get the knowledge that no matter what your children are going through, they're going to be fine. And some people go through really, really tough situations, illnesses and death and, so many difficult things that sometimes our children do experience. And, we do get through that. And, so we can't predict, and we can't soften the way, and we can't control, the journey that our children are going to have, and just like we can't control the journey that we're having, and that's really, really hard. We think that we can control our lives, and then when we're not focusing on our lives, we think we can control our children's lives. And, that brings us a lot of pain, because if we think we can control our lives so much and then our lives are turning out in ways that is not what we had expected, then we're going to be in a lot of distress. If we realize, what? I'm here for this ride, I'm here for this journey, and I'm just going to flow with it wherever it takes me, and that's what's meant for me. And if there are parts of it that I really hate and I really don't like, that I'm going to go into this energy and ask for help and ask for knowledge of what it is I'm supposed to be learning through this. What is the gift? What is the gift in the difficult worldly circumstance? Because spiritually, there is no bad experience. They don't label it as good and bad. It's experience is experience, and you learn from both. So we learn a lot from the good experiences, and we learn a lot from the bad experiences, no matter what form they take. And that is not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing when it comes to our adult children. It's just difficult. It's just not easy. So, I think for most people, we have to really practice this. And the way to practice this is really to meditate. So if you're having an issue with your child and you really can't see through it, meditate for a couple of minutes and ask for that other opinion. Ask for a different knowledge. Ask to look at this differently. And that will really, really help you. I was thinking about, how it is that I came into this soul energy, and that I can feel it so strongly, and my journey with it. And I think that, when you tap into this energy, it isn't easy to stay in it because we get pulled into the world, we get pulled back into the world. So for a very long time, I felt like I was in two separate worlds. I was in the world of earthly material, ego, stuff. And then I'm in the spiritual world of unconditional love. And I felt the differences between the two were so different. And for the longest time, I was either in it or out of it. And I had a very, very difficult time, dealing with that, because I would be in the world feeling all these ego things and being distressed and upset. And then I would kind of go back into this meditative spiritual world and feel something totally different. So it took me a really long time to make a bridge for myself. It took years for me to bridge it. And that's a part of why I'm doing these videos too. If I can give you some, kind of cheat sheets to do this, and to feel the benefits of it, that's really helpful. And I would have really liked that if someone did that for me, which actually people have done that for me, because all the spiritual teachers that I've learned from have done that for me. So the bridge that I created from this world to the spirit world is really what helps me so much now. And that bridge you want to create for yourself. You want to have that bridge so that when you're really entrenched in the ego and you're really entrenched in this world and the problems of this world, and your thoughts are really bothering you, that you bridge over into the soul, into your spirit, or into your, inner being or your inner wisdom. However it is that however you want to label it, that's what you want to bridge into. So the way that I, bridged into it took me a while, because I had to find things that worked for me. It was hard to, when you're in the unconditional spirit world of love, it's hard to want to come back to this world. You want to kind of stay in it. But that's not really feasible. You have to kind of learn this balance between the two worlds. And so a lot of the ways that you can do it is through, really listening to a lot of different spiritual teachers and finding your bridge to it. Because like for this topic, with kids that, are adult children, and really learning to disengage from their lives, and not in a way that you're not involved in their lives. I'm very involved in my children's lives, but I also now know that I can't control their lives. And even though what they do sometimes scares me, that I have to let them do what they need to do. So one of the bridges to it is really the biggest thing is when you're thinking, if you're having a lot of thoughts about your children, you have to say, well, wait a minute, why am I so focused on their journey? That's their journey. And unless they're asking me for help and advice, I have to ask myself, why am I so focused on them? What's going on with me? Am I bored in my life? Am I not attending to my life? Am I not creating for myself? Like, what's happening that my focus is so much on my adult children? So that's one way that you can question. And then the other way for me, for the thing that really helped me the most, was really questioning my thoughts and really saying any thought that's coming into my mind that's negative about them or about me is not true. It's not true. And it's not easy to question your thoughts, because they feel, when your thoughts come to you, they feel like they're the truth. I don't know. That's how my thoughts feel. And most of my clients that I work with, they all say the same thing, that they think something and they think it's true because they think it. And then they go to prove it true, like I'm not good enough. And then they prove the truth of that to themselves. And that's not a good thing to want to prove to yourself. So the biggest thing for me was realizing that, I was really not responsible for my thoughts. They are my perceptions of the world when I was very young, and they tend to recycle and they tend to keep coming around. And probably I'm thinking the same thing that I was thinking 10 years ago, and then I'm thinking the same thing 20 years ago. So it's most likely that I've been thinking these thoughts since I was very, very young. And, maybe they fit a situation at that time, but they certainly don't fit situations now. So I think that's such a great insight to know that when thoughts come and hit you and really want to take away your peace and want to take away your happiness of the day, that you challenge them and that you just realize that somewhere, if I'm thinking something that is hurting me, that I've made a mistake in my perceptions right now. So you could say, if I'm worrying about my daughter, if I'm worrying about what's going on with her and what she's doing, I would have to say, well, why am I worrying about her? Is anything happening? Is she calling me on the phone? Is she saying, Mama, I'm upset, I'm anxious, I'm in trouble? Is she doing anything that is causing me to worry? And, she might be doing a few things, but there's nothing life-threatening at the moment. Nothing bad is happening. So you can just ask yourself, is anything really life-threatening or bad happening right in this moment? And you have to really, take it moment by moment. So you could say to yourself, well, no, nothing, but they're not acting in a responsible way, so that makes me really anxious. So you have to keep bringing back to the reality, which is nothing bad is happening in this moment. And if nothing bad is happening in this moment, why am I flooding this moment with such, fear and worry? Why am I doing that to myself? And the soul energy really encourages us to move out of that, because the stress, when we sit there in that kind of worry, the stress that comes into our body, it is like it's happening. So some people will say, when I tell them that, my clients will say, well, but I feel like it prepares me. So if something bad happens, I'll be prepared. I won't be caught off guard. And, when I go into that soul energy, they say, yeah, but, it doesn't work, because if it were to happen, and it probably is not going to happen, but if it was going to happen, you're so worn down from the stress and worry and fear. You're so worn down that you're not gonna think that clearly when you are actually in the situation. So it's better to be relaxed and enjoying your life and just, saying everything is fine right now. There's nothing life-threatening happening. And if there is, I'll deal with it then. So right now, my life is fine. Right now, nothing bad is happening. So I can detach from that. So I will say to my clients, is what you're thinking, is it fact or is it a fiction? So anytime thoughts come into your mind that really got a hold of you and are really disturbing you, you have to just say, is this a fact? Is this really a fact? Or is this my fiction? Is this my scary movie that I'm just creating in my mind? And if it's a fiction, that's when we go within and ask for another look. So if I'm worrying about my daughter and nothing is happening, I can kind of go within and say, well, what's going on with me? Why am I so worried? And then the soul just comforts you. The soul will just comfort you, and you'll just feel love, and you'll feel a sense that everything is okay. So instead of your body reacting to this movie of horror, you are now sitting in your soul energy, which is love, and that is you can feel it throughout your whole body. And when you feel it, that's very healing. So it's almost like sitting in a horror movie or sitting in a beautiful, unconditionally loved movie that's going to support, relax you, and take away your anxieties and take away your fears. So that's the choice. And we want to always choose to go into this other energy. So for the longest time, when I would get a thought that said, oh, you're not good enough, or, something's wrong with your kids, or they're not perfect enough, or any kind of thought that comes flying in your mind. Anytime I would have those thoughts, I really was blaming myself early on in the spiritual journey. I was blaming myself. I was like, well, if I'm so spiritual and I can go into this soul energy and this energy feels so good, what's happening to me when I'm out of it? Like what the heck? And how can I help people if I can't find this balance? Like, I can't be in it and out of it. This is crazy, So it took me a really long time to figure out that, and to ask while I was in that energy, well, how do you do this? And, it's pretty simple, is that you just basically cannot believe anything that your mind brings to you when it comes to evaluating you or other people. And if it isn't something that is, positive, or isn't something that is loving or kind, that it is a mistake. It's just simple as that. And sometimes we don't want to hear that, because, if we feel a certain way towards somebody, we want to be right. And then we want to prove it. No, I'm right. They did this horrible thing to me, and they did it 5 times last year. And this is why I'm right. And when we do that, even when we feel like we're right to have these bad feelings about somebody else, we feel bad about it. People feel guilty because they'll come in and they'll talk about the situation where this other person wronged them, and they have all these, great reasons why they hate them now, and they're going to cut them out of their lives. And then after they're done talking, they start to doubt it. They start to be like, well, but I feel a little guilty thinking all these bad things about this person. And the reason why you feel guilt is because it's just a misperception. So the guilt is just a reminder. It's not something bad. It's a reminder that you have misperceived a situation. So when you go into the soul energy helps you so much with that. So if our feelings and our thoughts just happen to us, then we can't hold ourselves so responsible for them. And we also can't believe them, but we don't want to be mad at ourselves for having them. And that one took me a little bit to really embrace the ego and to really embrace every thought and feeling that I had. And it wasn't until I realized that embracing them helped me to see how false they were. So instead of fighting them and saying, well, I shouldn't even be thinking this because, this is terrible to be thinking this about myself, I'm like ripping myself apart, to really let yourself think all the horrible things you think and write them down and see all the stuff that you feel about yourself or other people. And then just to know it's not true. Just to know simply that this is not true. I have made a mistake somewhere along this line, and I'm going to now meditate on this, and I'm going to go within and ask for the truth. So what is the truth of this? So I'm not good enough. Is that true? When I go within and I ask, I get a resounding, absolutely, positively not. Are people better than other people? Absolutely, positively not. Are my adult children in trouble? Is there something I need to do for them? Did I fail them in some way? Absolutely not. So you have to be willing to be wrong. You have to be willing to be wrong. And you have to be willing to let go of the story that we've created through these thoughts and feelings. These thoughts and feelings we identify so strongly with, they become us. We feel like that we are our thoughts and feelings when we're really not. Because when all the thoughts and feelings, when the thoughts go away, those thoughts that really grab a hold of you and really, really bring you down, when they stop, you really feel the true you. And you're very clear on your life, and you're very clear on other people, and it just changes everything. And that's the true you. So when all that mess kind of goes away, clears away, it's almost like we have in our mind, like stains in our mind. So the soul will help you to just take, those eraser things you can buy that get off all the stains off the walls. The soul will lovingly just help you to wipe the stains away, so that when those thoughts come in that you're not good enough, or you're not a good enough parent because if you're a good enough parent, your child wouldn't be struggling in this way. The soul will help you remove the stain of that thought. And it doesn't mean that that thought isn't going to come back. It will, because that's just what the mind does. The mind will just keep recycling these thoughts and then creating these feelings, because that's what it does. And Byron Katie talks a lot about that, and she's a great person to help you. Her work is an amazing source to help you with your thoughts and feelings. So I would highly recommend, listening to her tapes. So when you have a bad thought or and that starts creating bad feelings, you just have to stop yourself and say, is this true? I find myself doing it pretty much all day long. And then that helps me to bridge back into the soul energy, because what happens is that once I realize, I've gone off, really derailed in my thoughts. It's like my thoughts just went from good to really, really bad. They just completely derailed. Then I can say, is this a fact? Is this a fact? Is this happening right now? Is this true? And if it's something in the future, it's like, well, how do I know this to be true? How do I know this to be true? How can I predict something that's going to happen in a negative way? What if every time I predict something that happened negatively, it actually turned out to be a positive? What if that was the truth? And honestly, that tends to be the truth. We just don't look at it that way. So I'll tell my clients a lot, this is an area you want to be wrong about. You want to be wrong about the way you talk to yourself, the way your thoughts come in and say things about you and other people. You want to be wrong about all that. You don't want to be right. You don't want to identify with that. And you don't want to be making cases against yourself and then making cases against other people, because it feels bad. It feels bad to rip yourself apart, and then it feels bad to rip other people apart. And we have to realize that anything that anyone is doing to us, we have done to them. It's just that simple, and we're capable of doing it to them. So, we can get very righteous and be like, well, I would never do that. That's not me. I don't do that. And that's not true. We do it. We do everything that has ever been done to us. We do to other people. So when we really own that, and just realize that it's just a mistake and it's okay, and you can cut yourself some slack, then you can cut other people slack very easily. You could very easily just kind of recognize when someone is having a really hard time and they're taking it out on you. You just can see it, and it doesn't bother you anymore. You don't get as hurt by it, and you kind of just let it go. You realize, wow, when someone is lashing out on me, it's because they first lashed out on themselves, and then they've lashed out on me. And if I look at myself, if I'm having a bad day, I'm at risk for doing that too to somebody. So the clearer I am and the better I feel, I'm not going to do that much, because you just don't. There's no need to feel so upset at yourself. When you have found your bridge to the soul energy, there's very little for you to do, and there's very little for you to feel competitive about, and there's very little for you to feel bad about, because you're just basking yourself in unconditional love. But the bridge, you're not going to walk across that bridge if you're really, really very, very focused on the ego and this world. You won't walk across it very often. So even though I had this amazing spiritual experience, I had found that I was spending more time in my ego than I was in this energy. And it wasn't until I really created that bridge for myself that I walk across it every single day, and I spend more time in the spiritual energy when I need it, or it just naturally comes up throughout the day. It just is naturally there. Because the more you see the reality of your thoughts, which they're not true, the more you see that, the less you even engage in them. And then you're just so present to enjoy your life. You're so present to look at the sky. You're so present to sit and listen with people, to sit and listen to your kids, and not to have a million things going on in your mind. It just changes you and allows you to be you, to be your true self. So that was the question, how do I stop worrying about my adult children? you really work on your thoughts. You really say to yourself, well, how is worrying about them going to help? Is it going to change anything, or is it just wearing me out? And, are the things I'm thinking even true? Because if it's hurting me, I know I've gone wrong someplace and it's not true. And the soul would have a very, very different advice for you. So ask for that advice when it comes to your children. What do my children need? What do they really need? And go within and ask, and you'll get a very different answer than what the ego would tell you. The ego would tell you, you better go in and rescue. You better go do something. You messed up. You're responsible. And that's not true. So I hope that helps. We are continuing with the magic, and I looked at today's exercise, and it's really very appropriate for our discussion today because it's about thoughts and dealing with negativity. So this is always just a nice little supplement to working on this stuff. So today, it's the magic practice number 7. So it's the magical way out of negativity. So what you want to do is you choose one problem or negative situation in your life that you most want to resolve. So if it has something to do with your adult kids, you could use that. List 10 things that you are grateful for about this negative situation. So again, the soul energy would say a negative situation isn't negative. It's just another situation. So what she's saying to do is basically to see that fact. So if you list 10 things that you're grateful for about this negative situation, and then at the end of this list, write thank you for a perfect resolution. So just for today, see if you can get through one day without saying anything negative. If you notice yourself thinking or saying something negative, use the magic lifeline. Stop and say, but I have to say what I'm really grateful for instead. So that's a good thing. So sometimes we find that when we're talking to people that we're talking very negatively about ourselves and our lives. So pay attention to how negatively you're talking about yourself. And instead of talking negatively, say something that you're grateful for. So if you want to bring up, oh my God, I'm so tired today. I didn't feel like coming to work, blah, blah, blah. Switch it to, I'm so glad I have this job. I'm glad to be here. This is what I like about the job. So you're just going to switch it around. So that really does help us in our lives to kind of catch our misperceptions that anything negative can be seen as a gift. And the reality of our lives, if it's happening to us, then that's what's meant to be happening. And it's perfect for us. It's a perfect learning opportunity. So if our school is looking like it's very calm, happy, and peaceful, then that's where you're supposed to be learning. If somebody's journey looks like very dramatic and very ego-filled, that's what they're supposed to be learning. So, when I see my clients, if they're not ready to let go of their thoughts and their thinking, if they're not ready to see that their thoughts are not true, I'm not going to push that on them. I'm just going to sit and listen. And when they're ready, and when my soul energy kind of gives me that go ahead and gives me that idea to say something, then I will. But I'm not going to push somebody out of where they are and what they need to learn. How would I know that this situation isn't the best thing that could have happened for them? And especially with our adult children, how do we know that what they're struggling with isn't really the best thing for them right now? And it's really, really hard to go through that, to see your child in pain. It really, really is difficult. But it's better for us to see, to look at our own lives, and to say, well, I've had a lot of pain throughout my life, and I survived it, and I learned from it. And that's going to be the same thing for my kids. So to remind yourself of when you were the young adult and you were struggling, and what helped you, and could anything that your parents do or say really have helped? No, you had to figure it out on your own. And giving your adult children that time and respect, and just to be there for support is enough. Is there anything I can do for you? How can I help you? And if they ask for help, again, within reason, you go within and check your soul energy. Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Does this feel right? If you're doing something for them and it doesn't feel right, it's probably not what you should be doing. Usually when we're doing the right thing, it feels really good. So again, using how we feel about things as our guide. So if my daughter asked me to do something, if she asked me to make her breakfast and I'm like happy to do it, then there's no internal struggle if that's the right choice. If she would ask me to make her breakfast and I have 5 clients and I can't do it, and then I try to make her breakfast and I'm stressed, not the right choice. So we have to constantly go within and ask, and always challenge any kind of thoughts that are going to hurt you in any shape or form. Because the soul, when you're in that energy, that unconditional energy, there's nothing wrong with you, and you're perfect as is. You're at a perfect, your life is perfect. You have a perfect amount of money. Your bodies are perfect. There's nothing you have to do to become more perfect. And that's always been consistently the soul's answer to me. So I would like for you to be able to go within and feel that support and that love and that unconditional love, so that you can really have the support to challenge these thoughts that come to us that are so not true. So I hope that helps. Don't forget to do your magic exercise for today, and list the things that you're grateful for in any negative situation that comes your way. And have a beautiful day. And as always, if you want to ask any more questions, feel free to email me at janismart40@yahoo.com. I also have that mediumship course online if you're interested in that. You can also email me about that. So have a beautiful day, and don't believe anything that your mind has to say about you or anybody else that hurts. Okay? Take care. Bye-bye.